Aye.
Thank you. It's Wednesday, February 22nd. I will bring the meeting to order, the Board of Equalization hearing at 7:02. I'm going to adjust the schedule just a bit. We're going to go ahead and approve the minutes from our last meeting. Oh, before that, let me back up. Welcome our two new members of the committee, Donald Shoemaker and Kevin Brindle. And also present tonight, Tony Shiflett, another committee member, Martha Collier, Darius Gould, our assessor, Justin Park from the assessor's office, Lena Connery is here, and our applicant is,
Jordan Harmon.
say again?
Jordan, last name Harmon, H-A-R.
Okay, Jordan Harmon, okay. I had Mark Rogers was going to be here. Harmon. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll go ahead and, if everybody's had a minute or time to review the minutes from the last meeting, only two of us are voting on that tonight since the other two members were not on the board at that time. So, Mr. Shipman, have you had,
Yes,
do you have any, need to see any changes to the minutes?
no.
Okay. And would you approve them?
Yes, I do.
And I would also approve them, so we will save those minutes from the meeting of, it had to be September sometime, it was for February.
February 14th.
Where am I seeing that?
It's the first last year, February.
Okay. So we approve the minutes from the February 14th meeting of 2022 as presented. Okay, I'm fumbling, so we'll go ahead and let me fumble. At this point, we are going to open the floor for nominations for the chair and vice chair and secretary of this committee. So the floor is open. We'll do the chairman first. The nomination for Martha Collier was made and seconded. Everybody in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? For vice chair? The second. Shiplet?
Yes.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. So Mr. Shiplet will serve as the vice chair. How about for secretary of the commission or the board? I would second that.
How did you nominate everybody but yourself?
Hey, he's been around for a while, right?
So, is there a second to that? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. Okay, done minutes. At this time, we'll go ahead with the hearing, and the way we're going to do that, Mr. Harmon will have 5 minutes to present his concerns, and after he's finished, Mr. Gould will have 5 minutes to tell us his findings, and then we will proceed after that. So if you would, go ahead, please.
Madam Chairwoman, members of the board, members of the city, good evening. My name again, Jordan Hartman. I'm with a law firm called Wilkes Artis Trotter. I'm here tonight on behalf of the owner of the residences at City Center, which is a 291-unit apartment complex located at 125 and 170 Market Street, which is, of course, right across the street from where we are here tonight. Now, I believe everybody has a copy of the BOE package containing our appeal of the assessor's response. If you'd be so kind as to turn to page 4 of this document, hopefully your all's page numbers are the same as mine. It'll be labeled as page 3 at the top, and you'll see that there's a 3-year operating history of the property.
Is it this one?
Yes, sir.
The chart.
Okay. Because page 4 is
Is the code.
the code citation.
It's actually page
Page 3. Page 3, excellent. Yeah, I was working on the PDF document, so sometimes so looking at that page, the issues on appeal are the gross effective income and the replacement reserves. First, the assessment overstates the gross effective income that can be achieved at this property as of the date of value. I'd like to now direct your attention to the next page, which has a copy of Virginia Code Section 58.1-3295.1. This is a state law that pertains only to multifamily properties. You can see on Section A1 that this statute requires actual gross income generated from the property, as well as actual vacancy, collection loss, and rent concessions be considered for the assessment. Looking back at the prior page, the 3-year history of this property, you can see that the actual gross income of the property has never been at the level that's assessed. 2021, the highest of the prior 3 years, gross effective income was nearly $350,000 lower than the assessment. Now, the assessor has provided a revised income approach. This revised income approach is still $150,000 higher than the highest year in the past 3 of this property. Assessing gross income above what the property has been able to achieve over any of the prior 3 years is contrary to Virginia law. As such, gross effective income should not be imputed any higher than that which was achieved in 2021. The next issue on appeal is the replacement reserves. Now, as background, PwC conducts a quarterly survey of industry participants regarding, among other things, replacement reserves. This survey shows that in the first quarter of 2022, 80% of multifamily property owners in the Mid-Atlantic region imputed replacement reserves. Only 20% accounted for replacement reserves in the cap rate. Here, the assessment did not initially state which method for accounting for replacement reserves was employed. However, the city's response states that replacement reserves are implied in the cap rate. The issue is implied replacement reserves are not stated. We don't know how many basis points were added to the cap rate to account for the replacement reserves, so it's really impossible to check that replacement reserves are adequately accounted for. So to summarize, Virginia law requires multifamily properties be assessed by considering actual income expenses. The assessment initially overstated gross effective income by $350,000, and upon revision, overstated gross effective income by $150,000. Next, the replacement reserves need to be adequately accounted for. Simply asserting that replacement reserves are implied in the cap rate without providing any support does not adequately account for replacement reserves. Due to these errors in the assessment results in a value greater than the fair market value of this property as of the date of value. The taxpayer respectfully requests that the assessment be reduced as set forth in the appeal. Thank you.
Mr. Gill?
Okay. As far as the microphone, do I need to do anything with it? Or-
When you're talking, you just push the button down.
Okay.
All right, see how this goes. Yeah, I just wanted to know, I guess you can go to, page 1 of our Office of City Assessor, summary, towards the end of the packet. And I guess there is kind of, note, kind of summary of the issues. First, there was a math error on the original assessments, direct capitalization approach, which I found when I gave the appellant the copy of the direct cap. I showed what the value would have been if that error wasn't made. So you'll see that on page 2 in that chart in the 2022 assessment column. So you're following? I'm sorry.
I'm not sure we only,
What page is it? Okay. So the first page you're referencing was page 9.
Page 1. But that's also a copy of it. So it's page 9. But I guess I was starting also on page 2. with the chart here.
I told you the wrong one.
I'm sorry.
This page two or this?
Yes. Yes, the one, yes, I guess page 2 of
Here we go.
our submission. Towards the back.
This page two.
Yeah, we're all over.
So maybe I should have started my page numbers after his to make it clear. My apologies. Okay. So the I guess the value if that math error wasn't made, I guess would be, see at the bottom of the 2022 assessment column, it would have been nearly 69 million, but we're currently at 65.7 million. So I just wanted to note that. And I guess also on the same page, I guess the 3 columns on the left are like the operating history from 2019 to 21. I have a column for the 2022 assessment, and I guess the appellant's pro forma, and I guess a column for my revised value. I guess in my revised value, I was a little more conservative in my projections for income. So as it turns out, I was roughly $200,000 less as far as the effective gross income than the original assessment, but I'm $150,000 higher than the appellant currently. And I still feel like my revised effective gross income is pretty conservative. If you're just kind of following the trend of the values that, excuse me, from 2019 to 20, there was roughly a 10.8% increase in the effective gross income. Then 2020 to 2021, there was about 5% increase. And from 2021 into my projection, I'm at about a 2.6% increase. And the appellant is not projecting an increase for any of the income. And then regarding expenses, I feel like my projection is still kind of right in line with the operating history. I'm at like 27% expenses, and also as far as in the whole dollars, slightly more than the most recent year that was reported at 1.6. So I'm at 1.62. And then also, let's see.
Where is I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Where is the 1.62 number?
Towards the bottom of the revised column
Oh, I
is
see.
the expense, total expenses there. No problem. And I guess the main difference you will see between, I guess, my revised column and the appellants or the owner's pro forma is they included their replacement reserve in their total expenses. So that's why theirs is higher. And as Jordan also mentioned, I guess previous assessors, they didn't include replacement of reserves as a expense. They just counted it, or basically implied in the cap rate. I guess the cap rates that they looked at, I guess, must have not also included replacement reserves in their development of the cap rate. So if we were to include that as a line item in the expenses, we would adjust the cap rate in kind with that. So we would basically result in the same value. So with that, I guess even my revised column, I still feel like it's conservative projections that I made. It's still resulting in a higher value, roughly 67.1 million, which is higher than, or which equates to about 230,000 per unit. They're still higher than the current assessment of 65.7 million. And also wanted to just show, I guess, page 3 of my submission. I also just included some comparable sales from the general market. I feel like these also support our value They range from roughly 230 to 290,000 per unit, and our current value is at 226,000 per unit. So I feel these sales, just offer further support for our assessment value. So I recommend, no change be, given for this year's assessment.
Okay, then I would ask you, Darius, if you could please give the way the assessment is shown is broken down by land value and building value. Can you separate that for both the 125 Market and 170 Market Street?
Yes,
Because on the applicants, it's broken down into two separate.
I guess the easiest place to see that would be on pages, let's see, in my submission, my portion of the submission, page 4, which shows the commercial property card, shows the value, 170 Market Street, and then page 6 has the other building under valuation.
Here, 170 Market, okay. Okay, so far, anything I should have, 125 Market right here. Does anyone have any questions of either the applicant or the appraiser? Mr. Brindle?
And Madam Chair, we have an opportunity to close, so.
Nothing? Do you have any?
I was actually, my take as, when I was reviewing your package, which I shared with you, providing, I read through every line item of your expenditures. I guess my take is, and this is just my take as someone that knows a little bit about real estate, is I took the last two sales that are in, actually, I believe that they were in no, it wasn't those. It's the other one, or the actual closed sales. And I multiplied the unit price by those sales by your number of units, Mr. One of them, they're both closed in Manassas. One of them was $233,553 per unit times 291 is $67,963,923. And I realize I said that too fast. The other one was 291 units at $272,857 per unit. And that gives me a value of $79,401,387. And I realize you're using income, and I guess that benefits you. I guess the income way of doing it benefits you, because when I look at actual sales, the last sale was actually the higher number, which is well above what the city assessor is actually assessing you at. So I would actually argue you're under assessed, and we need to raise you closer to the value of the last sale right here in Manassas Park. I believe that was, I believe it was Manassas, New York, which is the old Haber Hill. I believe that is the complex that was the last sale.
it's on the last page as well, I think that's where you, so, they're in the, I think they may be in the other list too, but.
So if I may.
It is, I can tell you, you're right, it's on page, on the very last page, page 9. It's this one here.
Of the assessors?
Yes.
Okay.
And all I did was I took the two sales comparisons, and I apologize, now I'll be more specific. The 233,553 per unit that was the Palisade, and they were sold on August of 2020, and the $272,857 per unit, that was, I think they're on Manassas yard now, it's a paper mill, and that was sold in September of 2021. So I only multiplied your number of units by the unit price of each of those sales, and those were the numbers I came up with. And the most recent one, which is the $79 million number, is the most recent, if we're doing it by transactions, which I thought was the appropriate way to look at the situation, because we're two that have sold within the last 2 years. They give you an assessment much, much, much higher than your current assessment from the city. And so I would argue that you're under assessed and that we need to increase the assessment to match the more recent transactions.
If I may have a moment to address that.
Go ahead.
Those sales, so the first reference was end of July 2020. The second reference was September 14th, 2021. So the most recent sale that you used for your comparison, the date of value here is July 1st. That sale was 9 months prior to the date of value. What's happened to cap rates between the date of that sale and the date of value? They've skyrocketed. The Fed had made 3 interest rate hikes before the date of value, totaling 150 basis points. They had announced that further interest rate hikes were on the way. Those have a direct correlation with cap rates. Simply taking the sale price per unit and multiplying it without accounting for differences in the income achievable of the property, but especially not even cap rates, is not accurate as of the date of value. Knowing that cap rates had increased by 150 basis points by the date of value and that more increases were almost certain as of the date of value, those sale comps are not easily one-to-one. They're not apples to apples because of the reason. Take those sale comps and if you had more data, if you had those NOIs of those properties at the time of sale, and you adjusted the cap rate up by a couple hundred basis points, maybe 250, 300, there, as referenced, there haven't been sales since they started raising cap rates. The market just shut down. Sellers want more, buyers are not willing to pay what they're willing to sell. So if we were to see a sale prior to the date of value, the cap rate would have been much higher.
No, I think you can't use future sales in order to determine the value. We can only use sales that are backward looking because that's the ones that have actually closed. So, I mean, I would also argue that your property is much newer than Hayward Hill. Apples to apples, your property is actually probably much nicer in terms of amenities and the property overall is much newer.
At the end, we are required by Virginia law to consider the income approach and the actual income produced at the property. And looking at those, unfortunately, it does not get us anywhere close to the assessment or the 79 million figure that you're saying. It's likely a combination of lower income actually achieved. It may look nicer on the outside, but at the end of the day, we have the figures in front of us, and they are what they are. It's capitalized at the uniform rate that the city has used, gets us to the values shown in the appeal. And that raises another point. On the city's response, you can see that they provide a history of the cap rates that have been used for these assessments.
Reference page.
Yes, so it's their page 2, the city's page 2. At the bottom of this chart, they have the assessment history. You can see across the first row, capitalization rate history. From 2019 to 2020, it remained at 7.3%, then dropped by 30 basis points for 2021, then dropped by 47 basis points for 2022. And this is despite the Fed having raised interest rates by 150 basis points. So that affects the value greatly and seems to be not in line with what was happening in the market as of the date of value, July 1st, 2022. I imagine that's due to the property having sold for $51 million right at that time. June 2018, it sold for $51,500,000. So the assessment came in directly at that level, which in Virginia, the Supreme Court has ruled fair market value. The best determination of that is a recent sale of the property. So that's, I imagine, why the assessors came in at that value.
What do you think aesthetically all this construction will do for property values? Protections there?
You know, it's up in the air. I mean, it's obviously a tight market, but does bringing on more units, does that alleviate some of the supply and demands mismatch that there may be? Or, is it more? So it's tough to say at this point.
But it would be determined too, the number of rental properties based compared to sale properties. I don't think all the new stuff is going to be rentals.
Or to,
All the new developments here behind City Hall are pretty much.
I mean, I guess you have the condos, so those would be older sales,
There's those back there are being sold.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're not going to be like apartments, rental apartments. So, any more questions? Anybody ever have any more comments, Mr. Wendell? Mr. Herman, or you have anything else?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'd like to add that the revised assessment does not fully account for the operating expenses incurred at this property. Look at page 2 of the city's response or page 3 of our appeal. And you'll see that the 3-year operating history does have a mismatch in operating expenses reported for both 2020 and 2021. Now that mismatch is due to enhanced cleaning and pandemic-related expenses that were present in both 2020 and 2021, presumed to continue on into. So actual expenses for 2020 are reported on our page 3. You can see for 2021, actual expenses were $1,630,455. The revised assessment imputes expenses at $1,621,106. So the revised assessment, again, we're supposed to look at what has actually happened at the property. That's what Virginia law dictates. The purpose of that law, that they've made a specific law just for multifamily, is presumably to keep assessments from speculating too much beyond what's actually occurred at the property. So what the revised assessment has done is projected income to increase and operating expenses to decrease. We all know what's happened with operating expenses, costs over the past, look at the 18 months prior to the date of value, July 1st, 2022. Inflation was 7% over 2021. Over 2022, the first 6 months, it was at or above 8% for most of that time. In June 2022, inflation was at 9%. Yet again, the revised assessment is projecting a decrease in operating expenses. If we're going to project an increase in income, we have to project an increase in operating expenses as well. If we take the conservative estimate of just 7%, which is what 2021 was, and 2022, first 6 months up until the date of value, was running higher than that. We have operating expenses by increasing 2021 actual by 7% result in an operating expense rate of $1,744,586. This would change the revised assessment to below the actual assessment, changing nothing else.
Do you have anything to offer? Any other?
I guess not much. Just wanted to just note, I guess the code says to, you shall consider the actuals, and that's what I tried to do in my projection, in my revised column. It didn't say it should only be, what was the last actual reported income and expenses, or NOI. So that's why mine's slightly higher than what was last reported. And there's also a note, I guess if I did take out a replacement reserve in my revised column, I think they had a replacement reserves of 116,400. And if I left the cap rate the same, yes, right, 116,400, it would give me a value of 65,338,000, which is still, pretty much where we were for this year, for 2022, 65.7, and that's without, adjusting the cap rate to, in kind with the, if we included the replacement reserve. So still feel like the value is, conservative and appropriate for the property.
Anybody else have any comments? Shoemaker? Okay, thank you, sir, for coming in and making your presentation, and we will discuss, and the city clerk will send you a finding.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you very much.